Today is a very special day for me as well as for the entire team of RMC. We're very ecstatic to bring you here our very first podcast, and we have here with us Kalai Ramea. He is the co-founder and CTO of Planette. Kalai, we're very grateful to have you here.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for having me on the podcast, Kamya.
Thank you. My very first question to you is: you started as a consultant in intelligent transportation systems industry, and now you are an AI scientist. I would love to hear about your story, how you started, and what was the motivation behind the start of your business.
To give a brief background, I finished my engineering in civil engineering. So that's how the transportation connection comes in. So naturally, I was looking into systems engineering and I did my master's in transportation systems, and that's how I was working as a consultant there. Mainly that involved designing networks, fiber optic systems for like cities and stuff. What happened was, I mean, that was a great job, but it had a lot of repetitive, monotonous way of doing things. So at one point, I got bored of it. I needed more math in my life, which is what I was trying to come to that conclusion. So I went back to school to get my PhD. That was in applied mathematics. I did quantitative modeling for climate and energy systems, and we were using a lot of techniques, including machine learning, and that was my foray into AI. Um,
Okay, so what challenges did you face? Like, once you have the monotonous routine and going back
mhm.
to pursuing PhD, it's very difficult. So, what challenges did you face, and when
Um,
did you start?
Yeah, so there can be many different facets to this, right? If you think about challenges, I mean, definitely financially, it's going to be a step back if you want to leave your, I don't know, lucrative job and go back to school. But then also, like working in an industry, especially in a consulting industry, gives you that discipline that you not people who directly do PhD may not have that. That was very beneficial for me. So you kind of think that as another project where you have to have deadlines and finish it. So that discipline and perseverance is like extremely important when you have to do like take on like a 5 year commitment to complete a PhD. And I was genuinely interested in the topic because at the time, this was in 2010, a lot of chatter was going on about climate change and energy. So I wanted to do something on my part, and I was super excited to dive into all of that.
Now that you have come a long, long way, what are some key strategies you have implemented that have significantly contributed to the growth of your business?
Yeah, so after I finished my PhD, I worked at Xerox PARC, also known as Palo Alto Research Center. So I spent like about 6 years there. So I led a team. It was almost like a small business within a research lab. So you had to like bring in funding, you had to hire people, manage people. So that was like a sandbox for me to have my own company right now. So you kind of think in terms of strategy, like how do you do all sorts of things, including like raising funding and all of that. So that is definitely helpful, like in terms of like anyone going into. So it was not like I went to school and then I have a business. I mean, people have done that too, of course, but yeah, for me that transition was super helpful in just getting to know how to manage people, for example, how to lead teams, how to lead product teams, especially, and then how to go from like ideation to deployment.
These are the qualities which are needed for a business owner, which you got in your previous industry experience. So, according to you, it wasn't that monotonous, right? You learned something
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of your
absolutely. I mean,
industry experience.
when I say monotonous, it was more like at the job aspect of stuff. There's no research per se in when you're consulting. It's more like you have to do small talk. You have to kind of think about how do you apply the different kinds of techniques that you have learned to different kinds of projects. So there is no cutting edge research that you're doing in consulting, at least. But definitely you pick up skills along the way. So I call my career path the scenic route. Some people have like a linear path, like they know what they want to do, but for me, it was more of an experimentation as I got there. So it was definitely very helpful. And now I realize like the skills I picked up along the way, like I wouldn't even think that it was then that is being used now. For example, like doing small talk with your customers, that's something I picked up in consulting. How do you start a conversation? How do you close the deal? So all of that matters, which I don't think you would get from academia, for example. So definitely there are so many things you could learn along the way. And I had a scenic route and I'm very proud of that.
Nice. How do you stay ahead of the industry trends? Like 2023 was the year of breakthroughs, especially in AI, with this chat GPT coming and all sorts of these deepfake videos, which could like impress you more than the real ones. And if I extrapolate that curve, I see that AI is going to blow human beings in the next 3 4 years, and it is good for human race in my perspective. But how do you stay ahead of this curve? How do you stay ahead of the trend?
Mm. I don't know. Yeah, so again, it comes back to research, right? So when I was at Xerox PARC, so to give a brief background on PARC itself, so they had invented internet, quote unquote, even before internet was a thing. So they called it ubiquitous computing, for example. So they had sensors in the ceiling, and then they kind of they had devices that people would talk to each other. And this was, I think, in the 70s or 80s, for example. And then they had an iPad version of it, and this was again in the 90s. So people are constantly and being surrounded by such people, like it was a great way to push the boundaries and think. For example, like talking about ChatGPT, right? I mean, so when I joined Park, this was in 2017. One of the projects that was going on was like generating language for proposals, because they found that customers have a lot of issues when writing a proposal. I mean, obviously, if you have to write something from scratch, it's daunting. So they were trying to build a model to write proposals and to respond to RFPs. That's request for proposals. So this was way ahead of its time, and now I see 10 or other startups doing just that. So I was privileged to be surrounded by such researchers and scientists who are constantly thinking what could be next, right? So definitely for me, my passion area was climate change. So I'm like borrowing concepts from different domains, and I'm trying to connect, because that has been my career. Like I borrow things from different domains, and like I'm an interdisciplinary scientist. So that I think also gives a unique insight as to how can you push the boundaries. Because if you're sticking to just one lane, it's very hard to cross breed and learn. But if you have traveled in multiple lanes, you're constantly it sparks your creativity on how you can push the boundaries. And that's all research is about. So I would say this, don't be shy in learning from different domains. For example, even though we do climate, there's so much to learn from biomedical imaging, for example. You would never think those are correlated, but then it's spatiotemporal, it's high dimensional. So there's so much to be learned from that. So just be aware of what's going on everywhere else and see, try to connect the dots.
You had me at when you are pushing your boundaries and when you get to learn from different domains. It was the nicest thing I've heard. Like I needed to listen this because I am the one who changes domains again and again, because it gets monotonous for me as well to do the same thing again and again. And but I think if I am the person who is doing this for 2 years and someone else is doing this for 10 years, he is ahead of the curve. So
Mm.
is it good to think that and feel inferior, or changing domains is good, or being in one career is justified? What do you
Okay,
suggest?
so yeah. So there is this meme that I saw, which, I think that relates to this. Um, the difference between a circle and a fingerprint. Circle is perfect, like you can try to be perfect, but then fingerprint is your own unique journey. For me, that's always superior. You bring your own perspective, you put your signature onto the world. and what you're leaving back is definitely much more valuable and unique compared to like being trying to be a perfect circle. I think we as a society, like we are kind of like pushed towards that narrative, like, do this by 18, do this by 20, do this by 25, and then do this. But it's like so much more we can learn from just breaking those stereotypes and like learning from different things. Not just for careers, even for everything else for that matter. Like we don't have to adhere to some like invisible rules and say like this is the perfect career path, because there's nothing like that. So of course your goals could be that, like if you want to have a certain learning that you want to achieve, like sure, you can carve a career path out of it. If you want to achieve certain monetary benefit, you can carve a career path. But then like there's joy in like learning so many different things. For me, that's the goal. Like I love to learn different things. Even now, I'm thinking like, what could be the next thing? Is AI and quantum the next thing? So I'm learning about quantum computing as well. So yeah, I would say there's nothing to be feeling inferior about. If you love learning, you should go for it.
How do you manage your life, like as a business leader and your personal life? How do you manage it?
Um, Okay, so there are a couple of things. So I learned a really good time management tips from a professor friend. As you know, like professors on tenure track, they have a load of work that they have to manage. They have to manage students, they have to manage research, they have to manage teaching. So one thing I was taught to do is like the time management aspect of it. So I use a software called OmniFocus. Um, any thought, any task that comes to your mind, just get it out of there, put it in OmniFocus, have a date assigned to it so that it's out of your brain and it's on somewhere. So every morning when I get up, like I look at the forecast, say, what is the forecast for next 2 days? So then I can see, okay, like this is the task that I need to complete in 2 days. So what can I do from now? So it kind of keeps me from being overwhelmed. If something has to, it's not non-urgent, like it can be done in a month from now. So I just put it in there, but it's like a month from now. Whereas it's something like demands my attention. Like we recently had a product launch, so there were like several emergency things that I had to attend to. So you just have to like prioritize that and do it. So kind of getting out of your brain and putting it out all there, I think that helps a lot in terms of managing your life. And this is not just for your, career related things, like even like simple things like, buying groceries, like, put everything out there. Like, don't use your brain for saving those things. Use your brain for thinking. Don't use your brain as a storage if it can be outsourced to something else. So that was a great time management tip that I learned. Just put it in your calendar. And then there was also another tip that I learned is like block your calendars to do the task. Say if something takes 4 hours to do, just block the calendar to do those 4 hours rather than saying, oh, I will do on Friday. When you're being very, very specific about it, like you stop procrastinating and you will do those things. I'll add one more thing to this because I use a lot of their
Sure, sure,
life
sure.
hacks. So I use a visual timer. So this one, so this is basically it. So I work in 25-minute chunks. So what this means
Pomodoro
is
technique.
yes, yeah,
Pomodoro.
Pomodoro. So it's 25-5. So turn it on for 25 minutes. I work on it, and then for 5 minutes I take a break, and then yeah. And so that way you're kind of tricking your brain, thinking, oh, you only work for 25 minutes. If there is a task that you have to complete for like 6 hours, especially writing, so this helps you start, and which is where you stop procrastinating. So yeah, these are some of the things that has made my life a bit easy. Of course, like I'm always constantly learning on productivity things. I'm a productivity nerd, so I'll try to learn as much as I can from other people.
How do you foster positive environment in your company? A
Yeah,
nurturing, positive, and inclusive culture.
yeah, that's really important for me. One thing I have done in my previous role as a technical director, as well as the current role, is um, people have different strengths. Like, not everyone is not the same, which is something I truly believe. So, when we have to strategize something as a group, I would bring all of them together. What I've done in the past is like, say, for example, we are setting a goal for a group. I tell them this is like a football team. Each one has a role, and you have to play together to win this. So, what is your strength? Like, what do you like to do? So, we literally do like a pros and cons for this goal. Like, what is everyone feeling like? I would like the buy-in instead of going top down, like, hey guys, like, this is what we will be doing. Um, the like latter works. Like if I just give a command that works, sure, but then I don't think that works in the long term from what I observed in other managers and like other groups. So you have to get the buy-in to have happiness and consensus in the group. So that is something I very strongly take in my role as a leader. So get the buy-in, hear their perspective, and more importantly, listen. Like if there are genuine concerns, just be open to hearing that, right? So everyone has blind spots. Um, I don't know what I'm doing unintentionally, so I would love to learn. So there's always this 360-degree view you need to have to foster that safety environment, and then like the culture of inclusiveness and everything.
What do you think of you being as a leader? Like, are you a good leader? Would love to hear it from you.
I like to think so. Yeah, everyone, I mean, I'm not going to say like, hey, I'm a shitty leader. Yeah, I like to think so. I mean, so here's my perspective. Nobody is like, comes and says like, I'm a born leader. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that, some people feel it. I don't feel it. But I've learned over time and I'm receiving feedback from people too. Like, and yeah, some people say, oh, what you did was a good thing. So then I learned from it, okay, this is a good strategy to have. This is not a good strategy to have. So you constantly reinvent yourself when you're up in that position, because you're trying to strike a balance between like, the people's happiness, productivity, the goal of the company and all of that. So there's like so many things that you have to do. It's almost like solving a Rubik's cube and you try your best. Honestly, like I mean, like I said, like everyone has blind spots. So yeah, if I'm like falling in something, like I would like to hear, and then like I'm open to hearing. Like I've never had people come and say, "Oh, I'm scared to talk to you." So that is a bad quality. So yeah, generally I foster that culture, and in the process, I think everyone can become a great leader. I don't think it's like, if people say like, I cannot be a good leader, I don't believe in that. Like you can always become a good leader, but you just have to be, open to people telling you things. So I think that is like the number one quality. You had to be open to criticism. You had to be open to be listening to other people's concerns.
And advice for aspiring young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, one thing I would say is like don't be afraid to fail, because I know like especially in very stereotypical South Asian communities, there's almost that risk averse and that's built in it. Like find a safe career path, find try to settle as soon as you can. So what that means is there's always that you know fear of failure built in it. Like, what if you fail? What if you fail? I think there's so much to learn even from failure. I think it's still an up. So, say for example, you do a startup and then it fails, for example. The learnings that you've had, even in the process of building, puts you several years ahead of so many other people who haven't done it. So I would say like change that perspective, and then like be open to think and like take risks. That's one thing I would say. And also like, be open to listening. Like this, as entrepreneurs, you are gonna be having like, a fire hose of advice coming to you. So it can get overwhelming, but you have to like kind of like discern, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And it's okay to like, feel overwhelmed and just take one step at a time and go through it. So those are two things I would give. Like I used to be one of those people who was afraid of taking risks. So if I didn't have that fear, I would have done this a long time ago. So and now I am doing it. I'm saying like, okay, it's okay. Like there's so many things I learn anyway, so there's nothing wrong in this. Like even if you fail, there's nothing wrong in this. So just cultivate that mentality. Success is not the only metric. So yeah, your learning is the metric that should be.
You told that it will put you ahead of so many people. So, is it justified or is it good for us to compare ourselves to others or just ourselves? Like me being
Just
me, what I was 5 years ago,
yeah.
and I'm not
I mean,
that
I would
person
say
anymore.
like, yeah, I've never meant like comparing. Say, for example, if you stuck in a job that you didn't do this, if you did this, that's absolutely fine. But then if your goal is like learning many things in life, then go through an entrepreneurship path, do whatever you want to do, even if that doesn't work out, you're going to learn so much from doing that. So even for your personal career journey, it's going to put several years ahead. So that's what I meant by like comparing. Like, you can take like, like a trajectory in your two parallel universes, like, and then see what will happen. And there's certainly nothing wrong with being like not doing that, but it depends on your goal, like I said before. If you're in that, like if you're getting tired of being monotonous, if you're getting tired of being doing this, one thing for their entire life, then yeah, try it. Like, don't be afraid of not trying it. Um, so for other people, it's fine. Like if they want to stick to that same pathway and they're happy with their life, I mean, that's fine as well. Um, it's up to what you want to get out of it.
What common mistakes we as a Gen Z should avoid?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know much enough about Gen Z to even comment. Like, I don't want to come across as like
I'll
condescending
tell you.
elder millennial telling things. What's that?
No, no. I'll tell you about my generation. What we want is
Mm-hmm.
we want it fast, like easy
Mm.
and fast.
I see, I
So,
see.
what would you tell?
Yeah, okay. Instant gratification, right? So that is something kind of built into because of the technology and social media and everything. Um, sure. I mean, you know what I'm going to say. So that is not the way to go. So there's like, type one pleasure and type two pleasure. Like type one is what you're saying, like, you get instant gratification. And then type two is something like an exercise, like you put in the effort. It is awful at the time, but you know that's good for you. So I I started seeing like the benefit of type two. So whatever it is, like whether you're learning something, like initially, whatever you start a new topic, it's going to be awful. Like you feel like you're stupid and everything. But doing something each day, even if it feels hard, is better than not doing it. So cultivate that patience, I guess. Like, yeah, that's something, including me, like most of us need. And we are all surrounded by technology that distracts us from one second to another. But so, yeah, helping cultivate time to be away from technology may help with that. So that is something I would say. And you were born with the technology, so it might be harder for you to be away from it. But yeah, something that we should all try to do.
Okay. What are your views to empower women in returning mothers conference? Like,
Yeah,
what are
like I
your views
said
behind the whole idea?
previously, yeah. Don't be afraid of the scenic path. I know a lot of returning mothers, like they would have started a career, they took a break for a kid or whatever reason for caregiving purposes. Um, Many of them are afraid to start over. I would say do not be like, because like I said, like we all try to be this perfect circle. I feel like it's much more interesting when you're a fingerprint. So, it's okay to start from scratch. It's okay to do something else. It's okay to go to a different career path. There's no one way to be successful. So, yeah, just be open to learning and yeah, take risks, then grab the opportunities when you can.
Could you contribute to a pre-conference event like online for the
Oh, sure.
conference?
Okay. What would it entail?
It can be any event like to empower women, any activity. or
Okay.
anything which uh, makes opportunities for women for networking or to make them ahead of the curve. The returning mothers, the participants basically.
Okay. Yeah, when is it and like yeah, what time of it? Like if we can decide on that.
Okay, so this is happening in November, 15th and
Mm-hmm.
16th November.
Yep. I'm losing your audio, Kamya.
But it would be
Uh,
pre-conference, so you means a meetup or a podcast, anything.
yeah, I can hear you now, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, I lost you a little bit there.
so let's collaborate on that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I was just saying let's collaborate on that as well.
Okay.
If you
Okay.
are agreeing to that
Sure.
on a
Yeah,
pre-conference.
I don't know if I want to agree like right now on the
Okay.
podcast, but yeah, sure. I'll look at the time commitment and I'll let you know. So because we have a product launch coming up in September and October, so hopefully November is fine. But yeah, let's sync when we get closer to this.
Okay, no problem. What initiatives or programs your company has, your business has that support women?
We are a very small company, so we don't specifically have like we are women founders. That itself, like we kind of try to um, encourage other women founders in that way, like just share our experience going through the fundraising process, building the company, because it's very different for women of color in the US versus someone who is not, right? So including like raising funds from venture capitalists. So there's so many nuances to this. So we share with our founders group, like what needs to be done, what are some best practices, how to address some biases when it comes to that. So that's what we have been doing. And like I said, like we don't have a program specifically to do that. Like we are like a really young company at this point. So, but we may have something in the future.
Okay. How can you facilitate opportunities for women at the conference? If you can provide
Um,
mentorship to them.
Sure, yeah, happy to talk to them and provide mentorship. If they're like talking about changing careers, restarting their career, yeah, sure, we can talk to them and see how that can be helpful. I've had experience in like data science, AI, and other kinds of things. So yeah, I can provide. I don't know much about Indian market in general, but I can provide content in terms of learning, for example, like where do you learn some things? What kind of jobs you can get, if and depending on your type of work requirement and everything. So I can guide on those things.
And what are some long-term ways we can collaborate with each other to continue supporting the women and returning mothers? And
I'm not sure at this point. You're talking like how Planette could help. So yeah, and yeah, we may have programs. Like I said, like we are a very young company, so I'm not sure. I need to talk to my co-founder, and we had to come up with some programs. Like we don't have that yet. Yeah, but we can always think about doing that. At my previous job, like I designed a returnship, which is specifically for returning mothers. So that was easier because it was a big organization, so we could actually carve out like a summer returnship. So it's an internship, but we consider mothers who are returning after a break. So I don't know if Planet is big enough to host something like that, but definitely something we could consider if we grow in the long term.
how can you leverage your expertise and network to help them, to create a
Like I said,
lasting
like
impact on them?
yeah, I can help out with the content itself. Like that is what I'm mostly aware of. I'm not sure about network. Like I said, I have not worked in Indian market at all, so I'm not sure. If anyone is in the US, I can help, but that's yeah. And my Indian market is very knowledge is very limited in this case.
Okay. So let's end it here only. And I really appreciate you coming here and your thoughts, especially when you said don't be a circle, be a fingerprint, and your time management techniques. So it was a great session and I learned a lot. So let's collaborate in future. We would love to have you
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kamya.
in
Like,
the
this was a
conference
great
as well.
conversation.
Like you said, you're not available at that time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was
Thank you.
great.